Okay, welcome back. Our final session is From Experimentation to Implementation, Building AI Practices for Reliable Results. Our instructor today is Tracy Norton, who holds the Eric Vincent Anderson Professorship and Professional Responsibility Professorship number 6 at LSU Law Center, where she has pioneered technology integration in legal education for 3 decades. In 1998, she co-developed the Interactive Citation Workstation, which has been consistently adopted by nearly half of American law schools since its initial release. Her current AI leadership includes co-creating the Law Professor's AI Sandbox and authoring the Open Education Resource Lawyering in the AI Era. Please welcome Dr. Tracy Norton.
All right, thank you. Let me do this. There we go. Make sure that's working. Let me walk over here away from that. Is it working? Okay, fantastic. So thank you guys for having me today. I'm very excited to be here with you. This is, I think, the 3rd time I've presented for the legislative auditor. And anyway, so without further ado. So I was just telling Lizzie that as time goes on, it gets a little bit more challenging to do presentations for broad audiences like this because, 3 years ago, we kind of all started in the same place. And now, some of you are doing some really amazing, innovative things with AI, and some of you are still a little reticent about it. And so the gap seems to get larger between the audience. And so it's sort of hard to hit in a middle part that will cover everybody. I think that we're going to do that today, and I'll give you guys some resources to explore on your own. But hopefully this is going to be something that all of you can use. There we go. So the challenge you're facing is either you haven't started yet and you're not sure where to begin or which tools, or maybe you're experimenting individually, getting mixed results, but you don't have a consistent system yet that you use. You haven't figured out like how you want to integrate it. Or you may be using it regularly but wondering if you're doing it right or whether you're maximizing its capabilities. And so regardless of where you are, what you want to do is to be able to use it well in the service of the public. And so the issue of whether you're going to use it, that ship has pretty much sailed. Everybody's using generative AI, even when you don't know that you're using it necessarily. It's become embedded in everything. So what we're going to cover today are, we're going to identify some good candidates, some daily tasks that are suited for AI assistance, and which ones are not. We're going to talk about task matching, so applying the right prompting approach to get better, more reliable results, depending upon the kind of task that you're interested in. And then applying the ABCJ framework, which is a quick reference sort of verification framework for your output. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about building shared practices within your office or agency and taking concrete next steps towards sustainable team-wide AI practices. So what generative AI actually does, it just predicts the next word in a sequence. That's what it does. And that's why people say that it hallucinates. It doesn't really hallucinate. A hallucination suggests that it's not doing something it's supposed to do. And so it's not a fact retrieval tool, it's not a fact verification tool, it's not, please hear this, it is not a research tool. It is a language generation tool. And so what it does is it predicts the next word in a sequence and the next and the next and the next and the next. It predicts those words based on the context that you give it. And so the more information you give it, the better it's going to be at predicting the next word. If I ask it what the capital is, maybe I'm thinking the capital of Louisiana, maybe I'm thinking the capital of the United States. And so if I just say, what is the capital, there are a lot of things it might give me, and I might say, well, it hallucinated the answer. Well, it did and it didn't. It gave me the best answer it could with the information that I gave it. If I say, what is the capital of France, it's going to tell me Paris. Not because it knows the capital of France, not because it knows what a capital is, not because it knows what France is, but because the words capital and France appear most often with the word Paris on the internet. And so it is a reasonable generation to think that the answer to what is the capital of France will be Paris. And so it's not guessing what the answer is, it's guessing what the most likely word is that follows that question. So that's helpful to know what it is, because that's, I find for me, that is the thing that prevents me from doing things that are counterproductive with it. When I remember, wait a minute, this is a language generation tool. It's trying to give me words that are relevant. It's not trying to answer a question. So it analyzes patterns based on massive amounts of text, and then it generates new text based on statistical probability. It doesn't have a relationship to the truth. So it doesn't see hallucinations as right or wrong, right? And it doesn't see them as true or false. It has no relationship to the truth. Even a psychopath, a pathological liar, has a relationship to the truth. It's a negative relationship, but it is a relationship, right? This has no relationship to the truth. It doesn't understand. There's no understanding of the concept of truth. There's only statistical probability. What words appear next to each other most often in its training data, which is pretty much the internet. So you think of it this way. If you taught somebody to cook by having them read through every recipe ever written without ever tasting food, they could probably write a recipe, but they couldn't tell from looking at it whether the food that's generated from the recipe or that results from the recipe would taste good. They don't have any sense of food or taste or pleasure with taste. And so AI produces things that look right, but it's your expertise that's going to determine whether it is right. And so this is a different kind of technology than we're used to. We're not used to technology that generates large amounts of text, and then we have to supply the expertise. Usually, if we're using a technology that supplies a large amount of text, it's already the right stuff. So if we do a Google search on something and it pulls up information, we assume that information has already been vetted before it gets to us. This is unvetted information. This is like, just imagine, there's that old saying that if you put a monkey at a typewriter long enough, eventually it'll type out Shakespeare, right? Well, this is sort of like that. This is more like the monkey in the room with the typewriter than it is a source, okay? So your expertise is going to determine whether what was produced is right, and that expertise doesn't start when you get the output. That expertise starts when you give it a context or give it a prompt. So what AI does well and what it doesn't, its strengths are drafting and reorganizing text, summarizing lengthy documents, generating multiple options quickly, identifying patterns in data, and formatting and structuring content. Now notice that nowhere in there does it say accuracy in facts or doing research. It doesn't do that well. But if you've got a bunch of stuff, it's good at organizing it. It's good at figuring out some patterns. Its limitations, it doesn't understand context or meaning. It can't determine what's true. It can't make professional judgments. It can't protect sensitive information the way that we would probably want it to. And it doesn't know your community's needs. And so the bottom line is, it is a powerful assistant. It is an incredibly powerful assistant. And if you're not using it for the work that you do, I really encourage you today to start thinking, as we're talking and after this session, to start thinking about how you might be able to leverage AI. but it is not a substitute for professional judgment. And that is great, great news, because none of us wants to show up to work one day and find out, oh, there's a robot doing your job now. And it's like, but I went to college. It wasn't supposed to happen to me. So, and that's not going to happen to anybody anytime soon. However, we can be replaced by people who are using AI to do their jobs better, faster, more efficiently, more productively. That is a real threat. The real threat comes from people who have the same professional judgment we do and who are using AI to their advantage. And so the good news is, even this far in, OpenAI released ChatGPT a little over 3 years ago, and even this far in and as fast as it's developed, if you get on the train today, you're still going to be an early adopter. And so there's plenty of good news as far as your ability to kind of start making progress in using AI to help you in your work. So why this matters for local government, local government. Apparently I meant hyper-local government. AI is already in your workflows whether you've adopted it or not. And you probably noticed this, that for example in a Google search it pops up automatically like an AI summary. And mostly the AI summary is helpful, and then sometimes you're like, that's not true actually, that's not a thing. So AI-generated summaries appear in Google results. Microsoft Copilot and Google's AI features and other tools are being embedded into software that you already use. I don't love Copilot. I'm not saying don't use Copilot. It's just I use a lot of different AI tools. Copilot's not my favorite. It's fine. And so I don't like it when Microsoft keeps trying to get me to use do you want to use Copilot for that? No, I don't. And everything I do in Excel, do you want to use Copilot for this? No, I really, really don't. And I can't seem to make it stop. The truth of the matter is, like I need 3 minutes to figure out where the off button is for that thing, and I just haven't had 3 minutes to do that yet. And so right now it's just worth it to me to keep going. No, I don't want it. Constituents. Your constituents are using AI to draft public comments, records requests, complaints. So you're already on the receiving end of this, even if you're not using it yourself. And so the risk with AI isn't theoretical. The problem is AI tools confidently produce really plausible sounding content that contains errors, hallucinations, fabricated statistics, outdated regulations, incorrect procedures, with real consequences for real people. And so it's important that you're aware that content, like it's floating out there in different ways. And so the good news is that the skill of information literacy with the proliferation of social media has become increasingly important over the last decade. And AI makes information literacy even more important, the ability to distinguish between what is accurate and what is not accurate. And so it's a skill that a lot of us already have. We've already started to distinguish between, just because you saw it on the internet doesn't make it true. My mother, God rest her soul, I'm glad she didn't live long enough to see this, because I'd be getting AI content all day, every day with panicked emails. The way I used to get things about bad things that would happen to me at the gas station if I didn't lock my car. Like there were all these, there's a rash of people putting hypodermic needles in the gas pumps, and I was like, I don't think that's true. But so we have those information literacy skills, and we just need to ratchet those up a notch. Louisiana has started to adopt some policy directions in different places. I don't know how helpful or constructive they are at this point, because it is still early days in the AI world. We're still trying to figure out how we want to handle all this. So the governor signed an executive order last year, and then a follow-up order, 25103 and 25109, that applies to state executive branch agencies, not directly to local government. And the key themes there were data security, quality control, human oversight, and prohibited data input. And that sort of signals where Louisiana is headed. The legislature has a number of AI-related bills this session that they're going to consider. The Louisiana Supreme Court, for those of you who are lawyers or who work with lawyers in your office, in 2024, the Louisiana Supreme Court released a letter that basically said existing professional rules already cover AI use. You already have to produce competent, factual information that is, based on reasonable interpretations of the law. That hasn't changed just because AI is out there. And so the takeaway from the governor's order, from some of the things the legislature is considering, and from the Louisiana Supreme Court letter is that although the formal guidance is minimal, the guidance is actually the same guidance we've always had about everything, which is you've got to be competent and accurate and responsible in your service to the public. That hasn't changed. AI adds a wrinkle to that, but it's the same thing you've always done. And again, your professional judgment is your greatest asset in doing your job, just as it always has been. So this is a grid that I put together for you guys, sort of a way to think about where you can and can't use AI. And so what we're looking at is, where does required human oversight overlap with AI time savings? And so where you've got low AI time savings and low oversight required, you could use AI. You're not going to get huge time savings, so maybe you do, maybe you don't want to use it. Usually for these tasks that are low time savings but low oversight needed, I just skip the AI because I usually end up spending more time having to fiddle with the AI output than it's worth, since I'm not saving that much time anyway. So it's worth it to me to just do those things myself. I teach first-year law students analysis and writing and research, and I've incorporated a lot of AI assignments this year to help them understand how AI works. And the overwhelming takeaway they have gotten from all of the AI assignments this year is about half of the time it's just easier to do it myself. And I'm like, bingo, you got it. So where there's high oversight required and low time savings, those are the tasks you want to keep for yourself, right? If you're really going to have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb and it's not going to save you any time, that's the stuff my students have been looking at, and they're like, it took me longer to fix the output than it would have to do the original. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes that's true. If there is lots of oversight required, but really big time savings, then you might do AI-assisted work plus a verification workflow. And I'll talk in a little bit about what a verification workflow looks like. But if you're going to experience huge time savings in exchange for your oversight, it's worth using the AI to assist you with it, knowing that you are really going to have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. The sweet spot for AI use is high time savings, low oversight, where it's something that gives you great time savings, but it doesn't take you a long time to verify. For me, that's letters and memos, okay? So I've already written all the letters and memos I'm ever going to want to write in my whole life. And I use Claude for this, and I'll talk about some different platforms. But I have trained Claude with a lot of letters that I've already written. And so it already knows how I sound in a letter of different types, okay? And so when I have a new letter to write, I say, I need this kind of letter in this kind of circumstance. Let's have it. And it writes one, and it sounds like me, and it takes me maybe a minute, maybe at the outside, a minute, for me to read it through, one-page letter, and see, yes, that's correct, or no, I need to fix that, or something. And so it's huge time savings, very low oversight, and so I use it a ton for things like that, where I can just eyeball it and see, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not correct, and then make a quick fix. And so that is the AI sweet spot: high time savings, low oversight. So what makes the difference in the kind of results that you get from AI is going to be your prompting. So the quality and utility of your AI input depends entirely on how you ask the questions. You want to think about it like this. This isn't a great analogy, but the sort of the mise en scène of it is helpful. Think of it like it's in a big library. It's not in a big library. It's not a research thing. But let's think of it like it's in a big library. And you say that you want information about families. And so you just send the AI out to get you information about families, or you want it to write you sentences about families. Well, it doesn't know if you mean plant families. Are you talking about different kinds of mint? Are you talking about families of affinity? Are you talking about families like nuclear families? Are you talking about extended families? Or what kind of family are you talking about? The less information you give it, the more it's going to wander around, and the more likely it is to just bring you something where you're like, no, that's not what I wanted. And so the more context you give it, the more information you give it, the more likely it is to give you something close to what you want. And so it's not researching in the way we think of research, but what it is doing is looking across its data and trying to find what words appear with family. What are the words that most often appear with family? And if you can tell it you're talking about plant families, specifically mint families, then it will get you it will find words that occur around family and mint and plant. So the more information you can give it, the better the better response you're going to get. So effective prompting isn't about, finding a magic phrase. It's really about having your professional judgment about how these things get talked about in combination with having the right prompting strategy, because there are a lot of different ways you can prompt. And so I'm going to show you guys a bunch of different prompting strategies that you can use. And then at the end, I'm going to give you guys a resource that you can explore more of. So first of all, prompting basics. There are 5 basic elements to a prompt. There's the role, telling AI who to write as. You are a whatever, municipal finance officer. A task, draft a memo summarizing whatever. Context, our parish recently completed, whatever relevant background. Specify the output structure. Use bullet points, keep it under 500 words. Put it in a table. I want a 3-column table, and I want these labels for each column. Put it in a spreadsheet. Put it in a, whatever. Constraints. Don't include any personally identifiable information. Don't use contractions. Don't, I'm trying to think of something else you could tell it. But any constraints that you want. Don't use informal language. Don't use M-dashes, whatever you want. And so here are some basic prompting techniques that you can use with that prompting framework. Having those 5 elements, here are the most basic ones. So there's 0-shot, 1-shot, and few-shot, okay? A 0-shot prompt is what most people do for everything. They just do a 0-shot prompt, but they don't include all 5 of those prompt categories, and so they don't usually get what they want. 0-shot is a direct ask. You tell it what you need, no examples, it's for straightforward things. Summarize this meeting agenda in 3 bullet points. You upload the meeting agenda, it gives it to you in 3 bullet points. Now, one of the reasons that works, even though it's a really simple prompt, is because although you haven't written any context, you have given it some context in that document. And so you are providing more context there. So 0-shot works when you don't need any context, or when you're going to provide context with maybe an upload. 1-shot, you show it one example. You provide an example of the kind of thing that you're asking for, And something like, here's how we formatted last month's public notice, draft this month using the same structure. So you give it one example, give it some new information, and let it go. A variation on that is few shot, where you give it multiple examples. That's what I did with my letters. So there's only so many different ways you can write a recommendation letter for a first-year law student applying for their first job in the summer. There's only, like, they don't know anything. They don't know anything. And they're not going to be useful in any way. And there are only so many ways you can say they came to class and were pleasant, right? And make that sound meaningful. And so, and they're all smart. Like, they're all smart. They're pretty much, I mean, they're mostly all pleasant. Not everybody's pleasant. But so there's only so many variations on that theme, right? So, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been a law professor for 30 years. So I've seen pretty much every law student archetype. I don't get surprised much anymore, rarely. And so I've got letters for pretty much every archetype, every situation. The student who's surly rarely comes to class, and when she does is snotty to me. I have a letter for that because that's a repeatable archetype. So I have uploaded, without identifying information, I've uploaded to Claude literally every recommendation letter I've written in 30 years. So that's a few shot example. I give it all. And then I tell it, when I start the letter, I say, ask me what you need to know. We're going to write a new letter. Ask me what you want to know. And it looks at all of those letters, and it synthesizes, sort of, for lack of a better word, it synthesizes the kinds of things that appear consistently across letters, and it asks me for that information. How did this person perform vis-a-vis their peers in team exercises? And then it'll give me some options. Were they collegial? Were they quiet? Were they whatever? And so I answer the questions, and then it pops out the letter. And the letters they're great. They're so great. And the letters don't have the sort of fatigue to them that mine would. And so that's a great example. First of all, it's high effort, low oversight, right? So I get huge time savings, and it doesn't require a lot of oversight. And I just have to read the letter and see, is all that true? Yes, I can sign it and send it on. And so I use a few shot prompt for that. Here are a bunch of examples. Give me something. The next are sort of some deeper prompt techniques. So there's chain of thought, where you ask the AI to reason through it step by step. It's not really reasoning, but it sort of shows its work, which lets you see if it's on the right track. You can see sort of how it's getting to its answer. It will reason on the screen. It'll go through things, and it looks like it's, somebody giving you a stream of consciousness idea. So you ask it to reason through a problem. That produces more reliable results, especially for analysis, comparison, or decision support. So compare these two vendor proposals. First, list the strengths of each, then the weaknesses, then recommend which better fits our criteria. I also like to add on there, show me your reasoning. And so it'll go through and do that, and you can kind of see and compare. Again, you've got to verify, because even though it's looking at specific proposals that you've given it, it will still hallucinate. If there's any information it doesn't have, it'll hallucinate. Another way that you can sort of get around that is to say, if you need any information, ask me for it. And so that'll help cut down on the hallucinations. Pretty much all of the platforms that I use, so I use Claude by Anthropic, I use Perplexity, I use Gemini by Google, and I use ChatGPT by OpenAI. All of those have an option where you can put custom instructions in there. And my custom instructions for all of them tell it that on every query, unless I say, I think I've got a phrase, it's like quick reply. If I say quick reply, then it won't do all this. But if I don't say quick reply, I ask it to push back on my question, point out any flaws in my request, offer critique of what I'm asking it to do, and make suggestions that it looks like I haven't thought of. And so for everything I ask one of those platforms to do for me, I get, it'll give me like 3 to 5 questions that it wants me to answer for clarification. And then it gives me critique. Here's some constructive critique. And I usually get 3 to 5 bullet points of constructive critique, followed by, here are 3 to 5 suggestions that you might not have thought of. And that has really upped my AI game a lot. And I get much better results that way because I've told it, I want you to push back. I don't want you to just tell me, oh, that's a great idea. Because for a while, I was like, I'm so smart. AI loves my ideas. And then it was like, no, AI, I was starting to see articles where it was like, AI's friendliness flaw. And I'm like, he's saying that to everyone? Are you? So anyway, so I get it to push back. Some are better at pushing back than others. I really like the way Claude pushes back. I think Claude right now, and it's a horse race. Like everybody's within a nose of each other right now. And like today, Claude is the most effective one that I use. But a couple of months ago, it was Gemini. And then a couple of months before that, it was ChatGPT. And it's going to change again. I mean, for most people's purposes, they're pretty much interchangeable. The only reason I have subscriptions to all of them is because this is what I research and write about. And so I have to compare. But generally, anyway, Claude pushes back the best, and it always has. Iterative refinement is another technique where you sort of build it in rounds. So you start with the first draft. You ask AI, so either a first draft that you create or that it creates. And then you ask it to improve specific aspects across multiple exchanges. And so I'm on this committee for an event. And we just had the event in January. And now we're planning, or in February. And now we're planning next year's event. Next year's event is going to be January 22nd through the 24th of 2027. And the website for this event is horrible. Every year. It's horrible. And so when they were taking volunteers for different tasks, I said, I'll do the website. I'll do the website. Because if I do the website, at least I know that I will be able to find things on the website. So I'm going to do the website. It may be crappy, but I'll know where the stuff is. And so I asked it to do the website. And so what I did was I got the logo for the event, and I got the information, and I uploaded it to Gemini. And I said, I need a color palette based on this logo for a website. And so they use Wix for their website, which I've never used before. And I have only the most rudimentary understanding of how to use HTML. I mean, really rudimentary. And so I said, here's the logo. Give me a color palette. I'm using Wix, so tell me what the color categories are going to look like in Wix that I need to set, and tell me what hex codes I need for each of those colors. And here's what I want the website to say. This is just going to be a landing page. It's just preliminary. Only one page. There's no menus, nothing yet. Just save the date. That's all this is. And so it gave me a mock-up of it, like a really nice website that I was able to upload very easily last night. It took me, I don't know, start to finish, I'm going to say 90 minutes to do a complete website. I don't know how to do websites. And it's awesome. And everybody was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Can you do a website for my business? And I'm like, no. No, nobody wants, like I'm not doing this for fun or money or nothing. I want to be able to find the stuff for this event next year. But it was amazing because it would have taken, first of all, I'd have never been able to do that. Second of all, to get the quality of the website that I got in an hour and a half, knowing nothing, would have cost a ton of money that the organization simply does not have. And so I was able to do that. My ignorant brain was able to do that in 90 minutes with a very rudimentary understanding of HTML. And one of the things that I haven't done for you, I thought I would get this done. Actually, this is a good backstory. I thought I'd have this done for you today, but I agreed to do that website over the weekend at our meeting, and so I didn't get to your website yet. But I'll get to your website because your website's fun for me to do. And I know what it's got. I've got all the stuff for your website. I just haven't pulled it up and put it on there and published it. So you're going to have your own website for this event. I now do websites for every presentation I do. A whole website where I go, here, explore to your heart's content. I put resources just for you, just for your, and you'll see when the website, it'll go live tomorrow. When your website goes live, what you're going to see is that what I have on the website is resources that people who work in and around local government can use. And so somebody went, oh. I'm able to do that because AI assists me. I know enough about what content I need that I can verify whether it's accurate and verify whether it's helpful. And then I can get bespoke content. So today I'm talking to you guys about, in a conference on local government excellence. Tomorrow I'm in New Orleans talking to judges. And so the judges get their own website that has judgy stuff on it. Right? And you guys have excellent stuff on it. And so I'm able to do that because I use generative AI for the task those sweet spot tasks. They don't require a ton of my oversight. It's not hard for me to check them, but I would never have the time to do this or the inclination. I have said to myself over the 30 years of my career, one day I'm going to hire a web designer, and once I hire that web designer, I'm going to look super smart and productive. Well, the great news is I look super smart and productive now, and I don't have a web designer. I just have Gen AI, which is great. So there are all kinds of things you can do. And so the iterative refinement, where I started with this story, was I just uploaded that stuff, and it gave me the page. And I said, okay, this thing doesn't look centered. I want this centered. And then I want a button here that when you press it, it'll download. When you press it, it'll add the date to somebody's calendar. And it did that. It did that. You just press a button and it adds the event to your calendar automatically. I don't know how to do that. But it does it. And so the people on the committee are like, ooh, can it do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. Let's find out. So I do it with iterative refinement. I keep saying, okay, now let's do this. No, I don't like that way. Do it this way. And so it's just a conversation. Finally, Gate Pass is the big one. Gate Pass is the full blueprint. Gate Pass is a prompt framework that I developed with a colleague at University of Louisville School of Law, Dr. Susan Tanner. And Professor Dr. Tanner, in law school, we're always professor, even if you have a PhD, which is probably, frankly, why I never got a PhD, because I'm like, if nobody's calling me doctor, I'm not doing it. Although Lizzie called me doctor. That was awesome. I was like, I love it. Oh, my parents would be so happy. Gate Pass we developed for specifically professional work. Specifically writing. If you do a lot of high-level, complex writing, Gate Pass is a prompt that we recommend for that. It's what I teach my law students because it also makes them better writers, and it's what I recommend to lawyers. And so Gate Pass, it's like those five categories that I told you guys about at the beginning of this for a prompt. It's just got more categories, and they're more refined. So Gate Pass is genre, author, tone, exigence, purpose, audience, and subject. And that gives everything, AI everything it needs to produce some professional quality work. And so it's good for policy memos, formal correspondence, RFPs. Oh, let me tell you. So 2 people from across campus, one in human resources and one in information science, wanted to put in this National Science Foundation grant. And they wanted to propose a project where we help people redesign higher education curriculum to integrate AI. And so we developed this framework for how we were going to do that. I have never, in the law schools, we don't do grant-funded research. We just sit in our office and think big thoughts and write them down. But in other places, they do actual research where they have to get grants and they do empirical stuff. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll try. And so I worked with them on that. I had never, ever done a grant. And so they asked me, like they had done like the initial summary of the proposal. And they said, okay, now it's time to actually write the proposal. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I took the summary. I said, do you mind if I upload this to AI? No, go ahead. So I upload the summary to AI. I upload the request for proposals from the National Science Foundation website to AI. And I said, take this summary, turn it into a full proposal, ask me any questions along the way where you need information. And it did that. And it generated a proposal. And I'm like, well, because I didn't know if that was a good proposal or not. Like, I didn't have the professional expertise to know if that was a good National Science Foundation proposal or not. But they did. And so I sent it to them. And I said, listen, here's what I did. Summary, RFP, answered questions. This is what it popped out. I have no idea if this is useful. They were like, this is amazing. And I'm like, I know, it's great. So it's really great. And it also writes a good RFP because there are tons of RFPs out there for all kinds of things. And so it does a really good job of things like that. If you write grant content, if you've got to respond to requests for proposals, if you've got to write requests for proposals, it does a really nice job with that. Now, I would recommend that you know what you're talking about. Like, your mileage will vary if you're an idiot like I am. But I had people who knew how to review this stuff. And so this is a better framework for something where precision matters. It will still hallucinate. I want to be very clear about that. It will still hallucinate. The other thing is, I don't recommend asking it to write a lot of text. I usually ask it to produce for me, like I'll do an outline, and I'll ask it to produce a section of a document at a time. First of all, because if it produces the whole document, first of all, the whole document's going to be garbage if it does a whole document, because it gets twisted around its own feet, and it's just not very good, and it's not long enough, and it's not substantial enough. It can usually handle a section or a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs at a time, and then I've got a manageable review task. I'm just looking at a few paragraphs. That's, it requires lots of oversight, but that doesn't take me a ton of time, and then slowly I can build out the document and see if, the AI is going to work for that. And so I do a lot of writing that way, where, it's not the kind of writing that my heart is in, but I've got the ideas, I just need to get it written quickly. And so I use GatePass, and I do like a section or a paragraph or a couple paragraphs at a time. So this is your task matching grid. So these are the types of tasks generally that it does well. Organize, summarize, draft, analyze, explore, and then complex documents. So what it looks like is, organizing is usually restructuring existing content. An example would be converting meeting notes into action items. It's super, super good at that. Summarize condensed lengthy material. Summarize, for example, a 40-page audit report. Now, you're going to have to verify that summary at some point. But if you're trying to get like a high-level overview, like I just need to see the forest for the trees, then it'll give you that, and then you can run down the specifics. You would not use that summary in any document without verifying everything in it. But if what you need is a high-level overview, which sometimes we do, before we can get started, we need to know just what are the broad strokes here, especially, oh my God, legislation. I don't know who's writing that stuff. AI now, probably. But I don't know who writes it or how they pump that out, but like a lot of times you're like, I just want to know what the bill says. And so you can get this to summarize it for you really easily, and then you run down the individual items. Create new content from scratch, drafting, for example, a public notice for a zoning hearing. work through multiple step problems, compare budget line items across years, things like that. Again, it's not a data tool, it's a language tool. It will still hallucinate with data. I've asked it to do a report from a spreadsheet and it just made things up. And I was like, you're making things up. And it said, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. And then made some more things up. I'm like, this is like, I've got 4 kids. This is what every one of them were like when they were 6. Like, my middle daughter who's now a soldier in the Army. She's a helicopter mechanic. She's married. She has a child. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I didn't do anything. Her thing, when she was that age, she would lie. I mean, just lie her ass off. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that exactly. She fabricated quite frequently. And every time I caught, and she's terrible at it. I told her, I said, listen, you are a terrible criminal. You're going to have to go straight. You're going to have to go straight. And so, but she lied until she graduated from high school. Lied. Terrible at it. Terrible at it. And every time I caught her when she was little, she'd go, I'm so sorry. And then she'd lie to me again. I'm like, Kate, that's not the truth. I'm so sorry. That's AI. Like was trained on my 6-year-old. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. And then it does it again. So even if it's data, you need to make sure you're checking it. Explore if you want to consider multiple approaches. I do this a lot where I say, I want 5 options. I don't know what I want exactly, but this is what I'm trying to do, and give me 5 options. And it does a nice job of that. And then there's, again, strategic high stakes writing, RFPs, formal policy memos, things like that. So these are sort of the types of tasks generally. And then these are the techniques for the task. So organizing, you can do 0-shot or 1-shot, and if that doesn't work, you can level up to few-shot. You don't want to use chain of thought or gate pass. And so what some people do is they're like, well, if gate pass is the most powerful prompt, I'm going to use it for everything. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's a complete waste of your time. And so start with the ones in this column. If you need to, you can level up to the next column, but don't, under any circumstances, use these techniques for these types of tasks. Your expertise is what determines how valuable the AI is. If you've used AI and you've been like, I tried it, it was bad, it's because you weren't using it in a way that multiplied your professional judgment. And so I'm hopeful that now you have a little bit of understanding of how to use it and what kinds of things to use it on, so that we are leveraging what you do best. So you use it like a partner. You use it for the stuff it does well. You use yourself for the things you do well. And then you partner together to produce things. I will tell you this, I don't spend less time at work. I don't. I use AI all the time. I don't spend less time at work. I don't spend less time on task. But my work product is better. It's slicker. It's more professional. It looks like I have a web designer and a graphic designer and an instructional designer tucked away in my pocket somewhere. And so the work product is better and more professional. And I can produce it in the same amount of time that I was producing this stuff, where it was just a Microsoft Word document and it looked like about something like I would produce. We're not going to do that, but this is an example of, a weak prompt. Write something about our new recycling program, and you upload a flyer about the recycling program. That's not great. Draft a 200-word announcement for our parish website about the new curbside recycling program launching April 1st, and you give it some real information, and it can do some things for you. I apologize that this is so small. So the last thing I want to share with you is the ABCJ framework. So in addition to checking it for accuracy, obviously, that's the first one, there are some known flaws to AI output. One of them is bias. It was trained on things that were written by people. People have biases. And there are some biases that are more prevalent than others. And so one in particular that I think is pretty non-controversial, so I'll mention it out loud, is ableist language. There's lots of ableist language on the internet, mostly because we didn't become sensitive to ableist language until the last, I'm going to say, 20, 25 years. And so there's a ton of, there are lots of people who still use ableist language. I'll give you an example from my work. I had this project where I was doing a fully anonymous peer review. Well, I called it double blind because that's what we call it. We just call it double blind, where the reviewer doesn't know the author and the author doesn't know the reviewer. And I submitted an article about it, and they said, would you mind changing double blind to fully anonymous because double blind is ableist? And I was like, oh, wow, that really is. And so there's tons of ableist language out there that we don't even necessarily realize, and it gets reproduced in the AI output. And so that's something you want to be aware of. Confidentiality. Did you protect sensitive information going in? If you didn't, don't panic. The FBI is probably not going to show up at your door. I say probably because I don't know what all of you do. Some of you, the FBI might show up at your door. With confidentiality, generally, most offices, most agencies are going to have, if they don't already, guidance on what you can upload. But keep in mind that most of the pay models, the premium models, Claude, Google, ChatGPT, all of those, the premium models have data privacy settings. You can go into the settings and say that you don't want your information used for fine-tuning. And that means that they won't hold on to any of your data, that your data stays on your local machine. Another thing you want to be aware of is if you're really concerned about privacy, there are models that you can run on your machine. You can put the AI on your computer, and then it just works on your computer. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to the internet. It doesn't do any of that. It just works on your computer. And the AI has advanced to such a stage now, the generative AI, that older models that are free to download to your machine are quite good. They're quite good. They're not the newest and the fastest and the buzziest, but they'll get you by for what most people need them for. And then finally, judgment. Does this reflect sound professional judgment? Remember, this has no relationship to the truth, right? And so if I need to solve a problem, like I need to make sure that people in this neighborhood are not putting trash cans out on Thursdays. Well, one way to solve that problem is to bomb the neighborhood, right? You could bomb the neighborhood, and now you don't have a trash can on other days of the week problem anymore. That's not a good professional judgment solution. Like, somebody should look at that and go, I think we're not going to bomb the neighborhood. Maybe we could send out a flyer. And so things that accomplish the goal but don't reflect good judgment, you'll get some of those. And so you got to make sure it reflects sound judgment. And so ABCJ is how you want to check for accuracy, for bias, for confidentiality, and for judgment. Don't put in personal identifying information, property and proprietary data, restricted and cybersecurity sensitive data. It's pretty easy to do that, to redact things. Now, let me tell you this. If you use Adobe PDF to redact a document, if you redact it and then just save it and upload it, that data under the redaction is still there in the metadata, right? What you want to do is save it as a PDF, then print it as a PDF, and now it's gone. Now the metadata is gone, and you've got it. But don't think that you're going to do the redaction in PDF and then just upload that, because that information is still going to be there. You want to print to PDF, and then it's gone. And then finally, the last thing I'll tell you guys is about building shared practices. I recommend that for folks who work together on similar tasks, start a shared prompt library. So if you're going to have those 5 elements of a prompt, like the role, for example, you guys aren't writing to 100,000 different people all the time. Like we generally do similar tasks throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month. And so if you've got a really good prompt for role, you've got a really good description for, whoever you usually send a memo to, then share that. Let other people use it, because you get a lot of return on investment, because you don't need to do these prompts from scratch every single time. Start building a prompt library when you've got a prompt that worked really well, and share them with each other so that you guys are leveraging not only your own AI use, but each other's AI use. And talk to each other about the fails. There are going to be fails. There are going to be times where you thought it was going to be a good idea and it was just tragic. And you share that with each other, because you're going to learn more from your own and each other's missteps and failures and misfires than you are from the things that went well. And so I have a trusted group of colleagues that I talk to about, I tried this, don't do that. Don't do that, that's no good. Establish some documentation standards, agree on how to note when AI was used. I have uploaded now, I'm getting into the routine of it, so it's not on all of my documents, but on most of my documents, I've got an AI disclosure at the bottom, and it says something, I think mine says human ingenuity accelerated and refined with AI, and then it's got my name and a copyright notice. On my emails, if you want to see this, just send me an email and I'll reply and you can see it. On all of my emails, it says my drafting accelerated and refined with Gen AI. And I've got a little logo. And I've got that at the bottom of every single email, so I don't have to worry about when to disclose and when not to, because like I said at the very beginning, Copilot is on everything, and so I'm like, you know what, I don't even know when they're using Gen AI in my email anymore. Just assume all of it has some sort of AI in it. Create feedback loops like I was talking about. Talk about what's working, what failed, what should we try next. And designate an AI point person, someone who stays current and shares what they learn. And it doesn't have to be an expert. It has to be an expert in what you do who is learning to incorporate AI. And listen, this is still so new. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And so people comment, like Lizzie gave me a very nice introduction and called me an expert. And people call me expert. I wrote that in my bio, so she was reading that. But even people that I don't write the intro for, they call me, oh, I'm calling you. I got 2 emails yesterday. We're reaching out to you because you're an expert. And I was like, what a world we live in. But you have time. You have time to become from zero to expert. You have time to do that. Yeah, so this is just, you can look at this later. This is just the kind of things that you should include in your prompt library. And so this week, pick one task from your regular work that's frequently done, low to moderate risk, time-consuming but routine. Try it with AI, check the output, see how it works. Just one thing. Just do one thing. Meeting minutes, I love. I once got fired as the secretary of a board because it took me too long to do meeting minutes, because I hate doing them because anyway, I was like, you all were there. Meeting minutes, it's awesome. So those are some things you can do. So this is the sandbox that I'll release it. Like, you can go there now, there's nothing there. But if you go there tomorrow, you will have a website for you that gives you some resources. It tells you what tools have which privacy protections. It tells you which tools are best for which task. It's updated as of February 2026, and so, this is a quickly shifting landscape, but it'll do what you need it to do. And it's got all of this information about prompting, and it's got like a gate pass sort of widget where it'll walk you through, it'll ask you the questions, and then it'll pop out your full prompt that you can cut and paste and put into the AI. So that's all there. If there's something that's not there that you wish were there, email me. You'll see my little email thing. And I'm happy to put it up there. I'm happy to do examples or resources or whatever is helpful to you. That's it. Thank you.
All right, everybody, just wanted to say thank you again, and thanks to all of our presenters and everybody who showed up here and online. Don't forget, your CPE certificates will be mailed out in early April. For those with CLE, don't forget to send your form in to Liz. Check your emails for a survey. We do need your feedback by March 27th. What you give us in the surveys is what we try and find you in presenters. And I just want to thank everybody again, Liz, the presenters, LLA staff, Sunflower, Lizzie, and Sissy here from Pennington. Thank you, and come back in October for our next one.